Thanks for coming through.
No worries, obviously.
I feel like we do this every year now. You always seem happier when you're in Korea than other conferences. I don't know why that is.
Food's better.
Yeah, it is. So I wanted to start with an essay that you put out, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think it was an entire piece how you sort of saw stablecoins going forward, the impacts on markets, the impacts on some crypto protocols in particular. Don't have to talk about Athena. I think we're doing enough glazing of that already. But interested just if you could give like a quick summary in terms of what you're thinking in that piece and trying to get across.
Yeah, so basically, obviously, this year in crypto has been a lot about stablecoins, and everyone asks me, why is U.S. Secretary Bessent and Trump and the First Family and all these politicians, why are they all getting on the stablecoin bandwagon? Is it because they care about innovation? And my answer is no, they don't give a fuck about innovation. They're all about projecting power for America and recovering what they believe they've lost. And the big issue is they have a lot of debt and they have to refinance it. And nobody wants to buy a 10-year, 30-year bond in America or anywhere else around the world because this has a lot of interest rate risk, a lot of duration risk. But people want to buy short-term debt because they want a good yield because the banks give you basically zero. And so Bessent can issue treasury bills, these less than one maturity bonds, but the problem is who's going to buy them? And so Tether has come out in terms of, I think they're the 19th largest holder of treasury bills globally now, something 150 billion, whatever the number is. And they're insatiable. They want more and more and more because it backs their token, USDT. And so how can the US regulators and the politicians support something that expands the use of the dollar digitally, removes sovereignty from different countries and their central banks over control of their people's money, and takes control of overseas deposits, Eurodollars, that they can't control in the banking system? And the stablecoin is the perfect vehicle for that, because by forcing money into stablecoins, they either sit in a bank deposit or they sit in treasury bills, both of which are under the full control of the Treasury Department. And then in the Treasury bill example, Bessent can issue bills at whatever price he wants because these issuers have to buy them. Otherwise, they don't make any money. And obviously, these are profit-maximizing situations, and they want to make money. And so in this essay, I basically talked about the numbers and made a very big prediction that there's maybe $10 trillion going into stable coins over the next few years, and that's going to power millions or billions more wallets to understand what DeFi is, because once you have a stable coin, now you want to trade it, now you want to lend it, now you want to collateralize it, and you start existing with all these other Lego blocks like Athena and Pendle and EtherFi and some other things in the ecosystem. And this could lead a massive, just not DeFi summer, but sort of like a DeFi 2 or 3 years until the political winds change in America.
So I think some of the numbers that you're speaking about are obviously gigantic, in the trillions, and that's kind of getting to the level where it's like nation-state level of people giving a shit about these things. I think you spoke about some of the winners and losers within crypto, but there's also winners and losers in the real world, right? It's like, what's the impact on the commercial banking system if stablecoins get to the size that you're describing? What happens to Europe or China if there's actually outflows from local currencies into stablecoins? Can you just talk about how you sort of see any potential like destabilizing impacts if stablecoins actually get to sort of size and scale that you're describing?
Yeah, so I think on the commercial banking level, Tether is the most profitable bank in history of humanity with 100 employees. What are they worth? Like $500 billion as of this morning?
Yeah.
That raise that they're doing. I looked at JP Morgan's worth $890 billion, so they got halfway to go to beat JP Morgan, but pretty much every single piece of shit bank out there in the world is worth less than Tether. And Tether has a fraction of their employees, can do KYC AML automatically on the blockchain, can move money instantaneously for practically nothing. And so it's a better business model. And so then it's a question of political corruption. How do they prevent this from happening, or do they allow it to happen? I think in the case of the U.S., obviously Trump and his First Family don't have love for the banks who debanked them during Biden's term. So I think you're going to find that they let a lot of things happen that maybe other places in the world don't, just because they have an animosity towards the traditional large money center banks. But at the end of the day, there will be 1 or 2 banks that say, okay, let me just fire 10,000 people and actually do this right, and maybe they'll have a viable business. But I don't see a lot of banks surviving the Tethers of the world coming and doing their business better, faster, cheaper. Because if I'm a customer, I have a phone, I can move my money instantaneously, and we found out how quickly a bank run can start in 2023 when the regulator is asleep, and a week later you have 3 banks who failed, which is the fastest of probably American history. So that And then on the sovereign level, countries like Korea, right? The KRW is a restricted currency. The Bank of Korea does everything it can to restrict the options of the people here to invest in other things outside of Korea. But they let Western tech companies come in and have you can have an X account, you can have a Facebook account, you can use Instagram and WhatsApp. And that's how these stablecoins are going to spread in places like Korea. Everybody wants a dollar. The regulators want you to have a won or a peso or a rupiah. But social media is ubiquitous, and it's going to be very hard to shut that down. So I think there's going to be some interesting political conversations between central banks who are pissed off that Western tech companies are coming and dollarizing all of their plebs. And then what do they say to the ambassador to the U.S.? Like, we're going to try to ban all these tech companies. And then, Trump says, no, I'm going to tariff you 100% on your cars. I don't know who's going to win, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Take two. You've spoken about the business model of stablecoins quite a bit and how Circle, Tether look quite different to everyone else within the space, and actually even between Tether and Circle themselves, quite different in terms of the profitability of the business, putting aside the supply differences that they have between the coins. You also mentioned that you're pretty bearish on new entrants coming to the market and being able to find any meaningful traction without like a distribution platform that's sort of sitting there and allowing them to be pushed. So maybe a question to you, which was like, your piece sort of inspired, Athena coming to market and doing what we did. Do you have different pieces of advice for anyone who's in like stablecoins, trying to break into what is a very big market but clearly very competitive? Do you think that this is a market where it makes sense to be building a new business and competing? And then I think just a second question on that. You mentioned the Tether valuation at 500 billion. It's like roughly the same as where Ethereum is right now. If that was a token with Tether token at 500 bill or Ethereum, which would you rather own at that price? Yeah.
Yeah. So on like building in the stablecoin ecosystem, so I would not back another issuer like Athena or even a Tether or a Circle, like a dollar pegged Tether variant, because again, you put that chart up there of all the different people that you guys are working with. Those are the people you need to be working with as a startup, right? And so how do you go into a Revolut and say, oh, well, I have 0 customers, 0 supply, but I've got this really good tech. Can we partner together? And then you come in and say, yeah, I've got 16 billion, and I'm the 3rd largest stablecoin. You want to partner? Who are they fucking going to choose? Like this, Athena, hands on every single time. So if we see so many pitches of, oh, I'm building a stablecoin for XYZ quarter. I'm like, okay, well, are you affiliated with an FMCG? Are you affiliated with a bank? Are you affiliated with a social media company? And if the answer is no, then I think you're a 0. And maybe you raise a bunch of money for sure, because there's a lot of dumbass VCs out there. But I don't think the businesses are going to survive. Where we are putting some effort is in how do you get small businesses to accept stablecoins and integrate those into their payment system, whether that's the offline tapping of your phone or that's the accounting systems and the FX transfers between local currencies and stablecoins, so you have to pay your taxes and different things in fiat still, even if you do accept stablecoins. So we backing a protocol called Codex that's trying to basically build that tech for businesses. I think that's an area where there's going to be a lot of competition and a few winners emerge. That's probably the only place in stablecoins that I would get involved in. And then Tether versus Ethereum. So again, the only problem with Tether, and I think obviously it's not a big deal right now, is it's very political, right? Because Howard Lutnick, I don't know what his position is in the cabinet, Commerce Secretary, right, is essentially their guardian angel. He owns 5%. Cantor Fitzgerald is their PB for the treasuries that they buy and their cash. And without them and sort of the blessing of sort of the elite in the U.S., they'd probably be back to where they were a few years ago, which fighting tooth and nail, not to get indicted by XYZ state or federal agency, or having trouble abroad in Europe or in other parts of the world. So it's a political play. I don't like betting on politics, as politics change. Life is long. Things are volatile. We don't know. But Ethereum is neutral tech, right? At the end of the day, Tether uses Ethereum to distribute another chains. You guys use Ethereum, so I would rather be betting on neutral tech that can be apolitical than a very political player who's doing very well right now because the politics are in their favor. But we don't know what happens if Trump dies tomorrow. If you look at the actuary tables, he's got about a 33% chance of dying every year at this age. And so then what happens if there's a new political regime, because whoever takes over is maybe not so keen on Lutnick and Tether. And now you've just got this massive valuation that you just bought into, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, they have the same juice with the empire that they did in the previous administration. I don't know. So that's the one problem with investing in a business like Tether. So.
So last quick question, and changing gears from stablecoin. So people are talking about perpetual swaps and equities quite a bit, and that's sort of being like a new frontier where sort of leveraged retail speculation right now is sort of on options, mainly on Robinhood, but all they're really wanting to do is express a long or a short view on leverage. It's not really like pricing volatility, the Greeks, all those different pieces. To me, I sort of think about perpetual swaps as kind of one of the very few true 0-to-1 like financial innovations that came out of crypto that's actually just kind of better than everything that you find within TradFi outright. What do you think about that as like a potential opportunity going forward in terms of building out perpetual swaps on equities? And then the second and last question is, if you were, had more energy and were starting out now to go and build something within the space, what idea or concept or sub-segment of the space would you be building in and trying to do something now?
Yeah, so perps on equities, I know we've thought about it a lot at BitMEX, and there have been other companies. I think FTX had a bit of a perp market for equities before they imploded. I know that there's a number of both decentralized and centralized players working on these products. I think Coinbase announced that they have something coming out. I know the guys at BitMEX are working on something. There's a few Silicon Valley DEXs that are trying to launch. So I think there will be perps on equities. They'll start outside of the US first, and I think they're going to have a lot of traction, especially in a place like Korea, very heavily trading culture, who understands, big tech companies and equities, like to trade them. And I think that's going to be a very 0-to-1, very, very quick success story. And then it's going to become a political issue, again, in the United States, because why don't they exist? Why don't single stock futures exist in the liquidity that S&P 500 or Qs exist? It's because, Morgan Stanley, Goldman, and JP, they make so much money in the custodying and stock bar loan businesses of equities that they make sure that the CFTC and the SEC deny any sort of improvement in this area. So there could have been single stock futures, at least, that are liquid on CME or CBOE, but it's been basically destroyed by the banks. So I don't know how America is going to cope with this particular type of innovation, because it's the banking system is antithetical to it. And then what would I build today in the ecosystem? That's an interesting one. What are we most excited about? I think this is the hardest thing to build, and I know people have really tried it, but if you had a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of energy, some sort of decentralized social media. I find it, obviously I have 700,000 followers on Twitter. You have various crypto personalities make a lot of money off of their followers on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, right? Why is it that we have this decentralized ecosystem where everyone is, tuning into these communities online, and we're really just enriching Elon and Zuck and all these guys, and when they get tired of us, they just shut us off, like they did with COVID, people deniers and people who didn't agree with their politics, and we're sitting here trying to basically disintermediate the banks and all these other parts of human existence politically, yet we rely on, less than 5 individuals globally for where we congregate as a community online, and I think that's fucked up, and we need to change it. So that's what I'd work on.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks,
man.
guys.
Can we, make some noise for Arthur?
네,
Okay.
박수 감사합니다.